All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name, as I mentioned, is Bill Fanning, and I help run the Talk organization. And definitely excited, really excited for this discussion. The whole premise of this discussion came out of, I think, a conversation Trent and I were having maybe a month or two ago about
Mhm.
the evolution that I think will be coming to being a TA leader. And the premise behind it for me personally, and I might have mentioned this before, came from my experience as a somebody who led revenue for a company. There was a period of time where revenue operations became a thing.
Mhm.
RevOps, and what during that process, what I learned and had some great mentors that helped me was that the role of a revenue leader was changing, and it was becoming much more data centric, and it was becoming more strategic, and it was using a lot of different technologies. And while this isn't 100% aligned with what a talent engineer or what's going on with talent is, it definitely to me seemed like similar of a change happening based on technology. And so that's part of the premise of our conversation today. um, just a couple uh, updates. Talk 2.0 is really making progress. And so I'm excited to be able to start sharing that and getting some people to come in and test it. So, for those who don't know, the Talk platform we have is awesome, but we're making some improvements. We're moving to a little bit of a better platform. What that's going to enable us to do is have a lot more interaction, a lot more community development, and a lot more networking and sharing. So, I'm excited for that. And so, more to come on that. I don't want to take up too much time. We are still doing a Talk podcast. I'm collaborating with somebody who is phenomenal in the industry to potentially help me in doing this. Her name is Shelley Billinghurst, and she's from Canada. So we're going to get a global perspective on this podcast. But
Love me some Shelly.
yeah, she's awesome. She really is. And so we're in the process of putting this all together, and we'll be starting and working on it soon. And excited for her participation. And as we grow this, you know, the goal is to have real, genuine conversations with Talk members about leading issues in the talent acquisition space. So you are all welcome to participate. This is the link that if you're interested in putting your name in for potential consideration, or you have a topic you want to discuss, that's how you would do it. And a couple discussions we're having, or I call discussions worth having, is today becoming a talent engineer. Next week, we have a phenomenal discussion, and it's a great guest joining us to talk about optimizing contingent workforce. And so, if you've read anything out there on this, the percentage of employees that are going to become contingent workers versus full time versus FTEs is factored to be somewhere. I've read different articles, but about 50% by 2030 is one statistic I've read. And so, how do we manage a contingent workforce differently than FTEs? And so, we're going to be talking about that. And then the next week, unfortunately, we're not going to be doing a discussion forum because we're going to all be in Scottsdale, Arizona for Talent Sphere. So, I just wanted to put that out there, and I'll update the calendar with June later today. Um, Couple quick asks that I have just because we try and have a little more of a community discussion. If you can turn on your camera, be awesome. If you can't, I get it. If you're having lunch or whatever, no problem. But if you can, it'd be awesome. Definitely feel free to join the conversation. This is not a pitch; it's an actual discussion. And so, if you have a question, you have a comment, you want to be part of the process, you're more than welcome to do that. And let's have some fun. Um, if you're new to Talk, you came from LinkedIn and you're joining us from the LinkedIn posting, Talk is a free community for TA leaders. Our only mission is to make talent acquisition grow for each and every one of us, exchange ideas, solve problems, explore new technologies, and get better at what we do. And so you're welcome to join. There is no cost, and we'd love to have you be part of this community. We have 80 local chapters across the country, and you can join the chapter that's closest to you. Talent Sphere is coming up. It is a week and a half. God, I can't believe it. Time has gone that fast. It's in Scottsdale, Arizona, which should solve my complaining and whining about being cold here in New England. I think I'm going to get the other end of the spectrum, which I'm excited about. So sunscreen and loose clothing will be the on the in the suitcase. One thing I wanted to mention is that we we put Talent Sphere together because it was a message in a way we wanted to talk about talent acquisition that stepped away from traditional conferences with more focus on networking and learning and having amazing speakers speak instead of vendors, right? This is not a pay to play venue. This is people getting up and sharing their wisdom and their knowledge from their day to day activities. And it's going to be fun. Vendors will be there. You can definitely learn about new technologies as well. But what we want is peer to peer interaction. And we did this in a way that we set a budget and we met that budget through ticket sales and some other things. So we're offering the opportunity because we want us to make this available to other people. And we know travel budgets can be tight and maybe airfare is not being covered or whatever. So we waived some ticket fees over the last week or two just to make it more accessible to people. So if you want to come and Scottsdale sounds like a hot place to be, which probably is, you are more than welcome. You can go to the website or search up Talent Sphere, and the purchase code to use is Talk Free. So I'm introducing Trent, who's somebody I've known for a while and respect quite a bit, and has some phenomenal thinking around where TA is going. And so I asked him to come be part of this conversation. And what we're talking about, not sure, let's do that. I'm not sure on my cartoon figure. So I asked AI what a talent engineer would look like. I said, okay, agentic AI is coming to TA, and I'm sure we're all wondering what change is going to look like. Show me what a talent engineer would look like. And that is ChatGPT's best right there. So always cracks me up some of the times what the images they would produce. But what I see, and again, this is going back to what some comparisons of RevOps, is the skill set of a TA leader today is awesome. It's relationship building. It's not spelling, obviously, because I spelled building wrong. So let's take that right off the table. But relationship building, I'm super at. Strategic thinking, experience in talent acquisition, ability to analyze data, recruitment marketing. I was going to put managing hiring managers on there. That's certainly a skill set unto itself. But this is what I think of as a TA leader today. And what's changing with the event in the use of agentic AI, not generative AI so much, but agentic AI that's going to come in and actually complete tasks, is the ability to evaluate and integrate AI systems, build the talent experience, the journey, the candidate journey with these different disparate technologies, change management, the ability to engineer prompts, the ability to audit and think about ethical considerations as you bring these technologies into your world. And the other thing that I think is important is to think about is agent development. What does that mean? And so Trent spoke a bunch on this topic and has some phenomenal ideas. So I asked him to join us to kind of share his thoughts. And again, we have, we have some general things we wanted to talk about, but absolutely please feel free to jump in and I'll ask questions along the way. And so will Trent, but we're really excited to just talk about this and exchange some ideas and learn. And hopefully we can all walk away with a little bit of a clearer picture. All right. So Trent, I'll let you introduce yourself and share a little bit with everybody about Talent Engineer, and we go from there.
Awesome. I appreciate that. And as you know, whenever I spoke in Boston on this topic, I'm very passionate about this. So I have been in HR recruiting for 21 years. I actually came from the line of business prior to getting into HR. I thought that I wanted to be a banker. I put myself through school working in banking, majored in marketing, minored in statistics and finance, had my whole journey planned out ahead of me. Never in a million years did I think I would end up in HR. But I actually got into it because I hated working with HR professionals and especially recruiters because they never could really find what I was looking for. So I've been a little bit of a renegade since I came in. I don't know that that's going to change anytime soon, but I like to take a very futuristic approach of where are things going to be in the next, I used to say 5 to 10 years, but now with AI and everything that's changing, in the economy and the workforce, it's almost getting to where we're going to be in the next 18 months. And then after that, I don't really want to give any kind of indication. But, I think it may be good if we look at some of the data, Bill, because I think that kind of sets the stage of what's really going on. So if we look at recruiting as it says right now, okay, the question that I wanted to ask is how much of the recruiting function will be automated by 2030? McKinsey, which is very well known for consulting, for statistics, for analysis, market trends, they say 75%. Gartner says 80%. And an average of 3 different HR polls I looked at said 41. All right. So I am a data guy. This tells me externally looking into the TA organization, everyone is looking and going, on average, at least north of 75% of the job will be automated. But when we look at what's going on in the organization, we only say that that's 41. So that is way outside of the standard deviation of error or standard of error. So we really need to start having some of these conversations. So yes, Brandon, I did have some really rough experiences. Whenever I tell people that I worked with prior to getting into HR that I'm in HR, you should see their face, because I spent more time in HR, not for the right reasons, because I wasn't really I wasn't a good leader. I just did things that I needed to get done. So yes, very bad.
Yeah.
But this data, I think, honestly, Bill, really just kind of sets the stage for what we need to evolve, right? We need to start talking about what does the talent organization of the future look like going forward. And I think that's what you and I have been noodling on for the last 90 days.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
Another interesting point, this is also from McKinsey. So while most analysts, they will look at Gen AI and agentic AI in the business setting and go, where is it going to have the most impact? I think everyone feels safe with how is it going to be able to help automate processes and make them more efficient. And when you look across the different size organizations and all the different departments, take IT out because they've been dealing with AI for a while. The two that are really prime target are operational, customer support, customer service, and HR, because all of them are heavy in paper, heavy in process. And I think all of us that have worked in recruiting, we love the recruiting part. It's the processes that just keep us from really kind of achieving that excellence that we want to do. But I want to point out that human resources remains the least AI automated business function across industries. I think in media and telecom, it goes up to like 22%. But I mean, it's really jarring that we are that far behind. Now, there's a caveat there. Of that, average, 13%, I would probably say of that 13%, 80% of the AI trials, products that have AI somehow built into it is on the TA side. We always test things. We like to be at the forefront. We're always looking for ways that we can become a little bit more efficient. So I think that in general, most TA organizations are a little bit ahead of the curve whenever it comes to AI. So let's talk about what, and you can stop sharing if you want to, Bill.
Sure. Yeah. So let's talk so we can see each other.
Yeah, there we go. So I think whenever I'm thinking talent engineer, I think by 2030, we're going to see a lot of organizations, and we've already seen a couple of headlines, Moderna, IBM, everyone's already looking at HR and what other organizations can be collapsed. Okay. Moderna did it with HR and IT. Never saw that one coming. I'm really interested to see what the data is coming out of that particular project. However, if I look at just the HR organizations within enterprise, so large organizations, I really think that I see L&D or learning and development at the silo and the wall between learning development and recruiting come crashing down. And I think it's just going to be one organization that is talent. And that's why we need talent engineers. We need recruiters to evolve well beyond where they are now. So I'm just looking through. There's no questions in the chat. Usually I get a barrage of questions there.
I guess maybe if we could stop, I mean, because we're Like I know you and I have been talking about this subject for a little while, but I'm curious for the people who are here from talk, the idea of talent engineering. Well, maybe it didn't have a label. Is there somebody in your organization doing this today? Is this an
Mhm.
area you're already started to embrace?
Yes.
And if so, how? I'd love to learn a little bit about. Daniel said yes. Anyone else? Daniel, quick question.
Awesome.
If you're open to it, would you mind? Or Angel, just share with us, what does it look like today in your organization when you think about talent engineering?
Yeah, so I think it's definitely streamlining more of the processes and
Yeah.
automating a lot of that. I mean, we have been using within our team, the link to AI function from a communication perspective. So being able to build more personalized messages, getting them out faster, doing the follow-up email. So crafting an email that will generate a follow-up because it usually takes 3 or 4 touches if you're sourcing talent. We're using within Workday. There's an automation function, AI driven, where it actually integrates with Outlook. So we don't have a coordinator that coordinates interviews. And I mean, I was averaging within my team, and I have a small team of 3, but we hired 200 plus people last year. And probably 30% of our time was scheduling interviews. And that's 3, 4, 5, sometimes 6 people reworking interviews, so integrating the calendaring and scheduling function, automating that has been huge for us. So we're working through the testing of that now, just because we can see the time save that it's going to have. I think the biggest challenge, we've recently had IT ask, like, well, why isn't TA doing more in AI? Why aren't we using more of that? It's like, well, the biggest challenge is, and I've been recruiting, this is my 27th year recruiting, to date myself, but it's evolved quite a bit. But it's understanding the market and understanding the competitive companies around. So we don't hire professional resume writers. And I would say at least 50% of the talent that I talk to, I'm like, oh, I know that company and I know they use the skill set or the tools that we use here, but it doesn't say it once in their resume. So if we leverage AI to sift through resumes, we're going to have a difficult time not digging through unless we can feed a tool, our competitive data. Like, hey, if, hire through Thermo Fisher because they use Oracle. But if somebody comes from Thermo Fisher, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't have or do have Oracle. We have to ask them. So how do we automate that piece too? So it's definitely more operational based that we're kind of digging in more of the AI functionality.
And Angel, if I can jump in, so this is not what you're saying. I just want to make sure that we're using the right terms for the different things. So there is automation.
Yep.
What you talked about, the integration with the calendar and all that. That's an if this then that. So that's automation.
True.
But the problem that you're trying to solve is, hey, we do hire from a lot of these competitors, but we don't know if they have X, Y, and Z. That's where that agentic, that autonomous thing comes in. So the person, maybe it's analyzing some of their social behavior on LinkedIn or their engagement with your brand, and it sends something to the agent that says this person may be interested. Do they work at ABC company? Yes. Let me see if I can engage them. And my first goal is to see, do they have Y skill? That's where that agent just goes and it's doing it all in the background. It can even almost have a kind of preliminary interview and create that candidate profile. And when you come in the morning, it's like, hey, John Smith, I reached out to him because of his social behaviors. He's been at the same company for 4 years. Market industry says usually people change in 3 years. He works for the competitor that we have hired, and he's got some of the same skill sets. Here's a candidate write-up. Do you want me to go ahead and schedule an interview? That's the agentic aspect of it. And I think that's where I'm so excited, because then, you can actually spend time with John, not just saying, hey, do you work here? Do you have this? Do you have this? But really kind of digging into, what have you done with those skills? Like, have you learned these skills in the last 2 years on your own? Okay, cool. Self-starter. They do well in our company. So I think you're ahead of the curve, but you're on the cusp of what's to come.
What's to come. Absolutely. And I'm interested to hear, how those that have implemented this, or as we move forward with this, what the candidate experience is like. And I say this only because I hire senior level talent, 20 plus years of experience. I run the internship program here, and I ask specifically, in, orientations, like, how many people have interviewed using like AI tools, again, just, or have been, connected, and what's your experience like? And people drop off when they're not talking to humans.
Yeah.
So it's like the chat bots, things like that haven't been as well received based on just anecdotally from what I'm hearing. But I'd like to see how an agent, an AI generative agent could pull data that could give us the tools to engage at a higher level.
So this is where I struggle with a lot of, not just TA, HR in general. Okay. So give you an example, I worked on a project with a client that was kind of HR focused, and I asked them, do we have all the data? Because you can't build AI on top of faulty data. Yeah, we got everything. So built it, put it in there, send something back. Hey, it doesn't work. Okay, well, what are you asking it? And it gave me the question. I said, well, it's not in the data set. Like, I don't have to look to know that what you're asking is way outside of the scope. I think that TA is doing that on the front end of it. Well, let's just have AI interview. That's not a huge proponent for me. Maybe having some of the initial screening, absolutely. Now, what I would be okay with is Angel meets with the candidate and says, hey, I really like this candidate. You tell them, I'm going to send your information to the hiring manager. Let me introduce you to my co-pilot, and whatever you want to call it. Lex is my ChatGPT. I asked ChatGPT what name it wanted, and she said Lex, and that's what I call her as. So let me introduce you to Lex. If you can't reach me, you can email Lex. Lex is going to get back in touch with you. I can guarantee you that's going to enhance the candidate experience tremendously. My husband was out of work for 7 months, and it was gut-wrenching as a professional in the TA world to see how he was treated by TA professionals.
I agree. Yeah.
But I guarantee you, and he's getting to where he likes AI, but I guarantee you going through that, he would have much rather been able to, you wake up anxious at like 11 or 12 at night, go and chat your little agent, say, hey, when do you think I'm going to get a response? And that's whenever I think that agentic is really going to kind of take that candidate experience to the next level.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it does. Daniel, I didn't want to cut you off, but you had mentioned that your organization was doing some stuff with talent engineering. I'd love to hear it from your perspective as well.
Well, what we do is not so much that the divisions are totally integrated, but we are in close relationship with especially with L&D actually, in order to get talent not only out from the outside, but also how we can inform hiring leaders how to engage with talent. So we have that combination already that we work with those divisions. To be one single division, no, we are still far from this, absolutely. But I noticed there's a lot of overlap where we can use each other's resources and help each other out. So I think it's an excellent idea to have that, if you want, merge or bringing it together into one division. So we do work absolutely with that as well, in order to become, instead of simple recruiters, as Trent mentioned before, into talent engineers. AI, I personally use it, and I know my colleagues as well, for more practical cases like summaries, setting up, diminishing, for instance, if you have tons of lapse of text into a smaller section while keeping all the good points. I think also how you prompt is very important with AI. I am still very curious about that agent AI that what Trent is talking about, because that seems really to pick up what I always believe what AI was 20 years ago. That self-organizing, self-thinking, self-doing machine, if you want. I was kind of disappointed till now about AI. I noticed that AI is very much depending on humans still, but I feel with that agent AI, it can pick up much more of those, if you want, repetitive data tasks. At the same time, what Angel said, she has a very good point, and I also like to reiterate, I think majority of candidates, if possible, likes to have a human-to-human contact. Certain businesses, I know American Express, for instance, even got all the way away from that, the IVRs, if you want, the old AI, into back to humans they speak to, because they noticed that clients gave that feedback, they want to speak to a human being. So I think we still have that human part where AI comes around, and especially agent AI, I believe, is to help us out. And I really like to hear more about that AI type, that new generation AI from Trent.
Right. Yeah. So we can actually get into that, but I do want to tackle the question that was in there about concerned about underrepresented groups whenever it comes to screening candidates. That was an initial concern of mine as well. I am in an underrepresented group. So I had a lot of pause. But I will tell you, I have interviewed 3 different CEOs of AI and HR tech. And one of them, I asked the very pointed question, what is the effects of this on DEI? And his response was really interesting. Their AI, the agentic part, so they didn't program it this way. It was just something that it kind of learned and suggested. It started sending feedback based on interviewers highlighting, hey, we've noticed that this manager has interviewed 10 different people, but they only ask these questions to people that graduated from an HSCBU, right? HBSC. I can never say it right. Historically Black college and universities.
Yes.
So it brought that data point.
Thanks, Mark.
And it also brought up, hey, this manager has a tendency to push white males to the next and at the expense of females who are equally as qualified. As a TA leader, sometimes I've got a gut that that's going on, but that agent being able to bring that, thank you, HBCU, for the agent to be able to bring that to the TA and raise a flag and say, we have a problem here and here's the data. Then as a talent engineer, I can go and say, hey, Bill, let's kind of chat through, walk me through your decision-making on these 10 candidates. All right, I noticed that you asked these questions to these candidates and not to this one. Can you help me understand why? And sometimes I don't, there's that you have actual bias, and then sometimes you just have that unconscious bias. Being able to have that data and have that conversation with them brings that unconscious to the forefront, and it makes them a lot more self-aware. So I do share that concern, and that's why I mentioned earlier, a lot of TA organizations are just throwing AI in there, and it's causing all kinds of problems, and they're pointing at it and going, AI is not working. No, you're not working. You're not doing it correct. You need to treat it just like another employee. All of the agents that we have, I inspect what I expect. I do a monthly review of them, just like I do a monthly review of everybody else on my team. And if you don't take that type of approach, then yes, you are going to be surprised in not the good way of how the bias is going to hit you between the eyes. So, but that is a very valid question. I do want to acknowledge that is a very valid question. And if you want, Mark with Pillar HR was one of the ones. And then also too, Torrent Ellis has got some fantastic research out on the impact of AI on DEI. He released that in March, Bill, right before Transform, I think.
Yeah, it was just before March. He put out, and it's really interesting. I mean,
it is.
The thing from my personal experience working in a generative AI platform for diversity was the ability to do a very thorough breakdown of the taxonomy of skill set. And what I really found positive about that is sometimes hiring managers, including myself, have a hard time looking at a resume or somebody's background and extracting comparable skill sets to the role you're trying to fill if it's not very apparent. And so what I think some of the things that agentic AI can bring to the table is the ability to look at somebody who on paper may not look like a great fit, but to break down the skill sets behind the roles or tasks that they've performed and show the similarities. And to me that, and quite frankly, while it has a lot of applications, the place I really enjoy seeing it work effectively because it has never been done effectively is with military MOS translation.
Yeah, that would be, someone needs to go and create that. And another speaker that I like, I'm actually going to have him on my podcast as well, Mark with Hackajob. He was talking at RecFest, and he was giving an example that they were looking for a Java developer, I think is the example. And so the recruiter went in there, Java developer, blah, blah, blah. Well, the agent knew from its data set and from its research and from its learning that Glassdoor is built on Java. So it made the assumption that its software engineers at Glassdoor are probably good targets and sent over 10 or 15 candidates that didn't have Java anywhere on their profile. The agent knew that. And so I think that's where you're really going to be able to kind of level up. Always use the example of Iron Man. Tony Stark, badass, handsome, billionaire, inventor. He's above average human on his own, but whenever he augments himself with that AI, that's whenever he becomes a superhero. And that's where I think that we're going in the recruiting world. And that's what the talent engineer is going to be. It's going to be the Iron Man or woman or them.
Yeah, oddly about that is a lot of people think I look like him. A lot of Tony Stark happening.
I get that a lot. Yeah, I can totally see the resemblance. But did you want to pop up the slide?
Yeah, I'm going to do that right now. Just, Alyssa, you asked a question, which I just wanted to touch on for a second, about a good course to learn more about the implementation and evaluation of agentic AI. Trent and I are putting together, and I was going to save this for the end, but I'm just going to mention it now. We're actually putting together a class that's going to be an online 4-week session about talent engineering. And one of the classes that will be part of the curriculum will be to learn more, implement, select ethical considerations around agentic AI. The goal at the end of the 4-week session would to have a certificate showing that you've been invested time and effort to kind of move yourself forward as a talent engineer. So I'll share a little bit more about that when we get to the end of the presentation. But go ahead, Trent. I'll let you
thanks,
talk.
I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Awesome. All right. So, one of the questions was, what does this look like? All right. So let's talk about the talent org of the future. A hiring manager comes and says, hey, I need a role. All right. So the recruiter or the talent engineer, one thing that's not going to change is they will still have that intake, but they're going to have a co-pilot with them that's going to help take the notes. We've got some of that with, I think a couple of people have got Read Assistant in here. I'm talking about that on steroids. Okay. So imagine being able to have your little co-pilot up and you're having the video discussion with the hiring manager. Your agent says, hey, ask him this, ask him that. And you ask the manager not knowing why, but the agent does, because it's helping you build that sourcing strategy on the back end. When you hang up, you engage that sourcing agent that goes internally and externally and looks for the talent. Okay, so you've got this kind of multi-arm approach of making sure that you're not passing over fantastic internal talent, because the talent engineer is going to own all talent in the organization going forward. So they have a proclivity to make sure that we are looking internally and promoting from within, as well as we are, how do we bring in from the external? There's an interview agent. So maybe they do the preliminary, and all this is going to be depending on your particular candidate persona. I'm in tech. They're okay with having AI interview them. Someone in a frontline worker may not be. So you're going to need to kind of massage that. But nonetheless, there is an interview agent in that process that goes and pulls the necessary information from the skill set, from the chat that they were able to have with it, creates that candidate profile, ranks it against the job persona, the ideal job candidate, and then presents that to the talent engineer. They are able, just like I was telling Angel a little bit earlier, they're able to actually have an in-depth conversation. One of the stats that I didn't show was that candidates, I think this was in 2024, 46% of the time, candidates leave within the first year because they were not put in the right role. We own that. So I want an agent to kind of come in and be able to at least say, here are the best match, and here's some good matches, and here's why I rank them as a good match. All right. I'm testing a product now on the sourcing side that has agentic AI, and it does just that. There are times that I go into the good match and I go, well, you know what? I think they're a good fit, but I'm not having to scour through the resume. I'm looking and I'm clicking on certain things, and it's highlighting where in the conversation it came up, where in the resume it comes up. So it saves me a tremendous amount of time, especially for someone like me. I just learned the difference between front end and back end technologies in the last 3 years, right? So the talent engineer definitely still has that place and is the human in the loop. They decide who goes to the hiring manager. The hiring manager also has a co-pilot. Imagine being able to set an interview and send the link, The manager opens up that link, and here comes the resume, here comes the questionnaire. The agent is listening to the entire thing, and it's filling out all the answers. It gives the hiring manager a summary at the end that says, hey, do you agree with this? Is there anything you want to add or delay? Sends it over to the talent engineer. All right. So that interview agent is going to go and collect, if you've got 42 interviews like some organizations have, it's going to collect all of those and give you an executive summary, but then you can double click down where you need to. The talent engineer still manages the offer and negotiation process, both with the hiring manager and with the actual candidate or future employee. Then you've got an onboarding agent. All right. There's a lot of automation with onboarding, but what I'm talking about is the agent has access to all. This is a multi-agent process. So all of them are talking to each other. The OB agent got from one of the previous agents the resume, and it has the transcripts. And somehow the candidate mentioned that they play the piano. They are an avid, Adele fan, and they graduated from X university. That OB agent, in addition to gathering the paperwork and making sure that everything is done, introducing them to the culture, to the branding, to the swag store, it also goes into the organization and says, hey, you know what? Bill is a huge Adele fan. He graduated from the same college, or he graduated from a rival college, and he loves to play the piano. That OB agent goes in and says, hey, new candidate, I want to introduce you to Bill. I've already set up time in your first 2 weeks, so that way you can meet Bill. You guys have similar interests, and we find it so important for you to have a battle buddy in the organization. Can you imagine what kind of an onboarding experience that would be for a new employee? And all of this is done behind the scenes. Now, that sounds great. Let's go one step further. That candidate comes in and says, oh my God, I love my talent engineer. I love my hiring manager. The process was so much smoother, so much quicker. I'm actually aligned to a job that I never thought that I would be aligned to, but the agent actually helped me find it. And my onboarding was crisp. I learned so much. I've already got friends, and I'm only 3 weeks into this. And on week 8, a career agent tags them and says, we know you just started, but here's all the journeys that you can take in our organization. What interests you the most? Data engineer. Okay, cool. Again, this agent has access to the others. I can go and pull that candidate's resume, all the interview information, put it up against what does a data engineer at ABC company do? What are the requirements? Create a learning gap analysis, confirm it with that new employee, and say, would you like for me to help you create a learning plan? Fantastic. I already have access to your calendar. You want me to block off like an hour a month for you to go and get some of this training done? That report is then sent to the talent engineer that says, Bill just signed up to learn how to be a data engineer. I went ahead and added him to the future data engineer pool internal. That is what a talent engineer is doing. They are orchestrating agents, they are orchestrating the strategy, and they are absolutely driving results.
Yeah.
I'm a little excited about this, if you couldn't tell.
There is a question that Austin asked that I think is relevant too, because we've talked about a lot of agentic activity happening. And I think this is a great place to ask Austin's question. Well, what kind of audit access should or could a talent engineer have with all of these things happening? The question then to me is, how do we confirm the accuracy of the outputs? How do we make sure that the scenarios you outline, which again sound phenomenal, are happening with accuracy and accuracy? Let's just say that. I think that's a good point.
Right. So any kind of IT security or IT process audit, what it does is it goes and it looks at what was the task that was assigned to this particular process, and it goes and it gets sample sets and it pulls it out and it says, did we reach the same conclusion? Nothing's going to change. All we're doing is, rather than doing a process or this program or this code, we're actually going to be looking at what does this AI agent do? Let a human come in and say, yeah, I would arrive at that same decision. Or based on the data that I'm looking at, initially, whenever I looked at the resume, I'm like, Bill's not qualified. But looking at how the agent was able to pull this out, some of the interview notes and how the person scored, yeah, I would have put them through with that data. I think that there's going to be, within HR, there's going to be an AI officer. Probably at the corporate level, there will be an AI officer, like chief AI officer. And then in every large department, they're going to have a chief AI officer that handles what is our AI strategy? How do we mitigate risk? What's our governance? Who owns that? How are we going to test it? What regulatory things do we need to actually be able to make sure that we're complying with? And they're actually going to own that. So the process is already there. We just have to shift our mindset in how we actually go and take some of this data. A lot of the companies, I know you know Adam over at Talent Llama, I know Mark's got it.
Yep.
Several of them have already built that in place. So they can go and pull that report for you if you're called by the OFCCP or EEOC or anybody else. They've got that reporting that they can pull from an audit perspective. So, and that is one of the benefits of dealing with a vendor, is that you can actually mitigate that risk from internal to external because they're responsible for the risk.
Yeah. I think Paula asked a great question, and I agree 100%. Like, hiring managers sometimes can be a little stubborn, and they have a mindset of what they want, and they're not going to trust that an agentic AI is going to have a broader spectrum of skill set and hire. The way I had always thought about it personally, coming from a little time in working with hiring managers in that space, was a little bit more of consideration versus hire. So you don't have to hire the person, but what are your thoughts on that, Trent?
Yeah, so let me clarify. I'm not saying that the AI hires the individual. The AI is the statistician, the behavioral psychologist, the power recruiter, and the amazing researcher that goes through all these data things and pops it to the talent engineer, who turns around and meets with the hiring manager and says, hey, based on all this data, this is what I'm seeing. Let's talk through it. Yeah. But I think a lot of times, I know in my career, I've been almost belligerent about a particular hire that I knew was qualified for that role because I had seen that worked in other organizations, but the hiring manager was just dead set against it. I had no data to back up my gut. Now I'm going to have the data. So if Bill wants to hire Susie over Jane, but the AI is going, everything is pointing to Jane, then I need to have a really strong understanding and know, is Bill the one that's off? Or maybe I do need to go and check my agent. Maybe they messed up some things. So I think that's still a conversation that needs to be had, and that's still very human-centric. But AI is at least going to give you the base knowledge to make the right decision, hopefully.
Awesome.
Are there any others? There's some. I love all the energy in here.
I don't know if we're allowed to just pop in and ask. This is Paula.
Absolutely,
Paula.
Yeah, I mean, this all sounds amazing. I love it, but every time I think through it, I'm like, well, wait a second. How many of the skills are self-report, and are we using assessments? And how do we make sure the data is real? I mean, we're already running into, clearly AI built resumes. Where the resumes read, perfectly, basically for the job description, and then when you start talking to them, they're not there. Those skills aren't there. So, what's kind of what are some of the things that you're thinking about that are going to combat the candidate use of AI in our flight?
All right, so let's do a little bit of role play.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're interviewing me for a recruiter position. I tell you that I've got 5 years. I'm top of the class for recruiting. I'm just a rock star. You asked me what my time to fill was. And I go, what's time to fill? Right? Immediately, every red flag on everybody's that's on here went up and go, whoa, 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 whoa. Believe it or not, the AI can do that as well. We have an AI technical interviewer. So there is, the candidate meets with the recruiter, of course. And then we introduce, we're an AI company. We trust AI. We want you to have an AI experience with our technical interview, and it's going to assess where you are in the process. So someone comes in and goes, I have 5 years of React. I'm fantastic. There have been different little things that have come up where the AI, because I'll go back and I'll read things. Like I said, I inspect what I expect. And it says, this person is a mid. I go, they have 5 years of experience. They're not a mid. But whenever I go, it says, took dramatic pauses to answer questions. That combined with the proctoring score, I feel that it was using an agent to answer the question.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, wow. It's even able to judge soft skills based on how they answer the question. This person has very strong critical thinking skills. They didn't answer the question 100%, but the 80% that they did there was well structured, it was well thought out, and the time ran out on them. That's the only reason they made an 80. So there are a lot of things in there that, unless you can kind of peel back the layer of AI, you're not going to feel comfortable with, because what you don't know, you kind of make up a story about what it could be. So there's some really fantastic tech out there. It's still infant, but it is light years from where we were in 2022 whenever ChatGPT rolled its head around, right?
Yeah. That's a good. David Oliver just asked a great question. And the reason I'm bringing it up, because I've heard it discussed and I've heard a lot of different views on it. But perhaps should we prevent candidates from using AI, and what should that prevention or abstinence say about them? I've heard a lot of thoughts on it, but I mean, personally, I expect anyone I hire today for most roles out there to be using at some level AI in their day-to-day activity. So I would expect them to be using it as part of their process of communicating until it
Yeah.
becomes fraudulent. At that point, then I have a problem.
Agreed. We are going to reach a time where agents are interviewing agents. That's probably 7 or 8 years down the road. So, just like movie stars have agents that deal with the agents for, the producers, and they do all the negotiating, and then the actor just shows up and gets paid. I'm seeing that that's probably where we're going to be going if things continue on this trajectory. Where do I sit? I'm kind of like you. If you have no cognition, understanding, desire for AI, we can't hang. Because I love AI. It makes me lazy. I'm already lazy, but it makes me look efficient, and I want to make sure that my team has that same luxury. Now, I have dealt enough with AI to know that if someone responds to me in an email from a candidate and they use a semicolon, it's probably AI. I think 20% of the US population actually knows how to correctly use a semicolon. No one uses furthermore and moreover or unprecedented. When was the last time you used the word tapestry? So I think that we're going to get a very heightened awareness of when AI is being used for the wrong purposes. And we're going to still have to trust our gut. So it's not a binary answer. It's really going to have to be something we continue to fill out.
Well, now, David, I will say I use dashes all the time instead of commas. I don't usually use graphically I just, it's
Visually?
just how my brain works visually. I get dash and continue the next thought. But you're right. I rarely have used the term tapestry. When I listen to Adele, it's when I talk about the tapestry of sound.
Of course. But did you want to show the next slide? The next couple, we'll kind of go through these, and then we'll jump back into some of the questions. So if we're looking at like mindsets, and we're looking at what is this talent engineer going to do, I wanted to give you a couple of ground rules, personas. And I am going to put this into a persona that you can download. So if you want, just at the end, there's a QR code. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. Just send me a message and go, hey, I was on Talk. I want the talent engineer persona, and I'll send it to you once I get it done. I'm just shaping it up a little bit. So the first thing is system versus task focus. Recruiters fill jobs, and that's great. That's what we've asked them to do. Engineers are going to build systems that fill jobs consistently, predictably, and at scale. Okay. And that's because we're going to have a co-pilot. We're going to have our little Jarvis, the Iron Man Jarvis. We're going to have that's constantly going, hey, I'm seeing an increase in turnover in the organization here. I looked at their exit surveys. This is what they're missing. This is what the manager says that they were terminated for. I'm readjusting the search going forward so that way we don't make that same mistake. That's where we're going. That's an engineer's mindset versus, okay, well, here comes another, teller position. Why can't we keep tellers at that branch? So let's go to the next one, Bill. Problem-solving approach. When a recruiter hits a roadblock, we go around it. We go through it. When an engineer hits a roadblock, they redesign the road. And I think that's where a lot of the recruiting organizations that are cutting edge is going, we're not doing what we've always done. Let's just build a whole new road. And there's a lot of excitement with that, and also a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress. Trust me, I've done it 3 times. My hairline used to be up to here, but it's fun, it's needed. But I think that a lot of the talent engineers are going to be constantly looking for, how do we build new roads? That way we have that talent coming from the street all the way through retirement. The next one. Integration versus execution. Recruiters are great about iterating and updating the hiring process. Engineers are going to architect how talent flows through the entire organization. So from hello to goodbye, their learning journey. How do we resource them? How do we remarket to them? I think that's a huge thing that we don't get to do as TA because we're cut to the bone. Is how do we continuously keep those people that we know, like, Bill said that he wants to be a data engineer. I got a report that says, hey, he's taking the classes. How do I stay in contact with him, keep him in my portfolio? So when he's ready and the job is there, I just go and pull Bill. And then the rest of the organization just kind of is like a little bit of musical chairs. And that's where I really see us being able to have the opportunity to get to one day with agentic AI. The next one. Mm-hmm. Multi-agent. Recruiters focus on the hiring process, and we have got it down in most cases. Engineers, they're going to own that talent from hello to congratulations on retirement, and that's the lens that they're going to look at everything going forward. Because I am guilty, trust me, for the longest time, I used to tell my candidates, hey, as a recruiter, what you say I do, I'm done. All right? You have a problem with onboarding, get with the rec ops. Don't call me. You have a problem with your background, call rec ops. Don't call me. I'm moving on to the next one. You didn't get your computer. Don't call me. Call your onboarding person, right? That was my mindset, because all I had time was to, how do I move that piece of chocolate down, the belt in the quickest, most efficient way possible with the right talent. Now, as a talent engineer, I'm looking at the entire process, that whole journey, and all of my decisions that I make about every minute step in that experience is going to go through that lens, and it's really going to transform how we look at how we do things today.
What are you defining as a talent engineer? Are you referring to like a talent acquisition professional, not designating recruiter or sourcer or researcher? Like, what are you referring to as a talent engineer?
I am someone who has got a passion for learning development, who maybe has been a recruiter, who has been even maybe an HRBP. They just didn't like to do all the cold calling and all that other kind of stuff. That talent engineer is more about a mindset and about an ability to be able to own that entire part of the process. So is it a recruiter? Maybe. Is it a sourcing person? Maybe. Is it an HRBP that got out of recruiting and really likes just dealing with the people side? Maybe. I think that's the gray area that I'm really excited to kind of see who's really going to kind of step up to the challenge and step into that TE role. And I don't think there's
a really quick question. How do you, this is, you talk about change management. This is changing the game where so many companies I've experienced are so segregated in that work function. Mm-hmm. So the end-to-end is not owned by one team or one engineer. It is owned by 4 different groups or more. And it's, how do you get that buy-in even from your leadership team to invest, and again, changing the conversation, so to speak, to be more efficient, to be more end-to-end.
Right. AI is the catalyst for a lot of paradigm shifts, is what I'm saying. So organizations that never would have looked at certain things, now because AI is changing the workforce, it is changing how processes are done. It's changing valuations of companies, right? This is going to force the conversation. And just think about it, okay? 3 weeks ago, would you have ever thought that Moderna would have put IT and HR together? It doesn't make sense. But Moderna is doing it because somehow they see something that we don't see. I think that there's going to be enough of this stuff going on. Shopify, was it Shopify? I don't know. All of them have kind of run together. I think it was Shopify that basically said, you can't open a position unless you do a justification that AI can't do the job. That wasn't on my bingo card. for 2025. So I think that the conversations that are happening just up until now are so revolutionary that whenever you bring this to your organization as an idea, maybe 6 months down the road, give you some time to kind of noodle on it and think about it, I think they may be a little bit more open to the conversation because of everything that they're seeing in the market. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's time. Patience, time, education, reiteration.
Oh, yeah.
Naz just made a great analogy about the cost savings. I was reading an article. So step back for a second. I was reading a Gartner article about areas that were going to be most impacted by AI. And the two biggest areas that they called out were HR talent acquisition and legal. And I was reading an article written by a head of a sizable law firm that the question was, are you afraid what this is what it's going to do to your business? And he's like, no, are you kidding me? I'm running 60% more efficient than I was. I'm billing the same amount per hour. So my net revenue that I'm making has gone up substantially because I no longer am paying paralegals to run around and do a bunch of things because agentic AI is doing it on our behalf. And I think that's a phenomenal example.
It is, and let me give you a real life example. Had an issue that I needed to get with our attorney on about a state specific regulatory thing. So I had already told my agent, can't remember which one I was using. You are an attorney who specializes in employment law in X state. Answer all my questions using that role. And so I asked it my questions, and then I went and validated it with the attorney. And the attorney was saying a couple of things that were not what the AI was telling me. I was like, okay, so, but I thought that I read under statute 146.9 that actually changed earlier this year that we no longer have to comply with what we were talking about. He goes, hang on a second. How did you know that? So I think that, it's usually, when we go to legal, and it's whatever they tell us. Okay, cool. They're in the Wizard of Oz. We're not. Wizard of Oz has actually come to us, right? So now I think it's going to be a little bit more conversation. The democratization of data and information and its access, I think, is really going to kind of level the playing field, and it's going to start to cause some organizational changes.
Absolutely. Well, we are right at time, but I didn't want to say I will be sending it. So Trent's QR code is here to get the persona of the talent engineer, and really hope you all take advantage of that. And then I absolutely am excited about this class that Trent and I are doing. So we are going to take the premise of the conversation we've had today and actually break it down into learning opportunities in core components so we can talk more about how we each individually rise to the challenge of how the TA landscape is changing, right? Let's get the framework and get the understanding so we continue to grow and accelerate as the technology accelerates with us. So super excited. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Trent, thank you so much for coming and sharing your information. And awesome. Really appreciate it. And Trent has I had a whole slide that I skipped because I got too excited to talk. A couple books out there that are phenomenal and a lot of information out on LinkedIn. He's somebody I highly recommend you follow because he brings such information and insight to this role. And again, thank you, everybody. It's awesome. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Love the interaction. Thank you for the opportunity, Bill.
Yep. Nope. Glad you could be here. Thanks, everybody.
See you in a week.
Bye.